Hello, Instagram Live. I don't know whether that's going to be our theme tune. It could be. I don't know. This is the first ever of our BookChain interviews. We're welcoming Hannah Gold. Hello, everybody. Hannah Gold. Applause. That's the audience that we can't see. Applauding, you're joining us. The BookChain Project is a series of interviews on Instagram Live, the first of which is hosted by me, Catherine L Kettle, and the next of which will be hosted by Hannah Gold. So the plan is that one interview interviews another author, and that author then interviews the next one, and so on, creating a chain, hence the name. One or two things before we get started. I'm going to give you a spoiler warning, everybody. We're going to be discussing the amazing book by Hannah Gold, The Last Bear, which is a middle grade adventure. I won't call it a tragedy because it's so full of hope. It's tragic because it's talking about the environment. And we will be probably touching on some key parts of the book at some point. Secondly, I've got my cup of tea. I don't know if you've got a hot chocolate or something on the go.
Well, I actually have a very fitting mug for
Look at the plug. See, I have a mug with my face on it that one or two of my friends bought me as a gift on my launch, which has a picture of me the day that I got my books delivered and opened them out of the box, and I hugged every single one of them. And I just find it quite difficult to sit there and drink out of a cup that's got my sort of grinning face on it.
Yeah, I would imagine drinking out of yourself is a slightly strange thing, isn't it?
Yeah, so I'm not plugging as much as I can with my mugs, as you are doing so effortlessly.
My husband got me this, so as a little launch present. So every time he makes me a drink, he always makes it in this mug. It's like
That's what you're telling everybody. That's what you're telling everybody. Stick to the story.
No, he does. He does, even because sometimes I like a smaller mug for and I don't always want like a big mug, and he always gets me like in the big mug. So he's next door, so hopefully he won't hear that, because he has to give me this mug every time I want a drink.
You need to have like a pint glass sized version of that, so you can just fill it with hot chocolate and marshmallows.
Oh, and,
get cozy with it. So let's get started. So thank you very much for joining and being the first guinea pig in this fabulous chain. I'm so excited by The Last Bear. We were talking about your book, and I was saying I finished it today in floods of tears, happy tears and sad tears, and it really touched me. There was some amazing poetic language. For me, it's a fantastic story for middle grade readers, but you really use big words and kind of big ideas to discuss this big subject, and so it's beautifully mature writing. I was intoxicated with it. I'm going to have to read it again and highlight it. I'm sorry. I know we shouldn't do that to books, but I will, because there were things that stood out to me, like describing the sky as apricot. I was like, oh, why hasn't anyone used that word before? Because it's just the perfect colour. And there was lines. There was one around love being magic.
Yeah, love, she decided, was like magic, but thank you for all your gorgeous words. It's obviously a book which means a lot to me, so when somebody reads it and really gets it, and we were talking about this just now, it's just so lovely to find that percentage of people that really love it, because not everyone's going to love your work, although you want them to in an egotistical way, but when you find people that do really like it and appreciate it and are moved by it, I think that's one of the most special things as an author.
Yeah, and one of the things I like to do when I find that somebody doesn't enjoy my book, which they will not, and actually I'm really grateful, even if people don't enjoy it and throw it away and DNF it, they get the chance to at least do that. And so many authors I know don't even get the chance to have their work written because they're unpublished yet, they haven't found their agent, they've found an agent, or they've fallen out of submissions. Every read, even the ones that don't get enjoyed for me, is a privilege, so I try to remind myself of that.
No, but that's a really good point, because I think sometimes when you're published, and we have like a publishing group between us, which is why this wonderful book chain comes from, we share the really good points, but we also share maybe the sort of the disappointing things, perhaps like a bad review. But it is really important to reflect, well, hang on a second, we're part of the percentage that have got published, and from those who are yet to reach this particular benchmark in their career, it's a position where they really want to get to. So I think this whole initiative that you're doing is so good at sharing where we've come and how we've got here, and also sort of putting the spotlight on it and saying, well, these are actually the things we have to deal with, which aren't so nice, like bad reviews, but also encouraging those along the way to say, well, you can make it too.
Yeah, it'd be nice to pull back the curtain a little bit. We'll see if our interviews do that, because I do feel a little bit like when I got to Oz, and then I met the great and powerful Oz, and I was like, oh, but I still want the magic, and the magic is still there. It's wonderful, it's marvelous, but it's peaks and troughs, and it's so easy to get performance anxiety, and it's so easy to get knocked back with things that you other people's success. You get compare and despair, and other people who you think should be recognized, you get angry for them. And then you get your own reviews, and you kind of, even the good ones, sometimes you think, oh, I can't live up to that, I can't live up to that expectation. Or the bad ones, oh, hang on, how did I miss that, or how did I not hit that point? Anyway, you're going to get fabulous reviews for that.
Well, you know, we all get good reviews, and we all get some not so good reviews, but I really like the idea, like in future interviews, of peeling back the curtain, because I think it's an industry which has got a lot of mystique and sort of mystery around it, hasn't it? And you don't really know until you get onto the inside what it's really about. And I'm still finding out, to be honest with you. I still don't know what it's really about.
Hopefully we will for much longer, for through books 2, 3, 4 and beyond. So let's take a breath. Tell me, and tell those people who have joined the chat or who will be watching this after the live session, what is the last bear about?
Well, the last bear, funnily enough, as she brings out the book cover, everybody, you know, and I'm going to disguise my face. So there we go. Yeah. So the last bear is the story of 11-year-old April, who travels to the Arctic Circle with her father, who's a scientist, and he's going to be measuring the weather whilst he's there, because that's one of my faves. And so he's going to be measuring the weather on this remote Arctic island called Bear Island, but there's no polar bears left on Bear Island. So says April's dad, because it's a completely uninhabited, wild island with no cars, there's no buildings, there's no school. But on the first night that April's there, she looks out the window and she sees a polar bear. So then this begins this amazing friendship, which is at the heart of the book. It really is the friendship between the girl and the polar bear. And then that kind of really close bond that you get sometimes between children and animals, which is what I really wanted to capture. And then you get this adventure that begins as well, where I won't give any spoilers away, but she has to go on a rescue mission. So then the adventure begins, and that's almost like the second half of the book. But it's a book really close to my heart, and the publishers call it a battle cry for the planet. Yeah, and the illustrations, which is really worth pointing out, they're by Levi Pinfold, who is absolutely amazing. I mean, to have him illustrate the book is just astonishing, and it's just got the most beautiful illustrations in it.
It's a gift, honestly. Those illustrations, I mean, the book in itself is wonderful, but they really bring you in, and they're so engrossing. And for young readers, they remind me of when I was little. I was reading very old books, and you would get to those beautiful pages that almost they had the protective film on, you know. And it was like each one of them was like a little gift in the book. And like, yes, that is how it looks. Well, no, it isn't. And you get intrigued and you get lost in those pictures. I also have to mention in the hardback,
the gold bear. Yeah.
Oh, I want that. I just want that as a poster. I mean,
that is just stunning. And also, because one of the things, obviously my name is Hannah Gold, and so when they were talking about like any kind of cover ideas, I was like, I almost don't care, just as long as my name's in gold. You know, so they delivered on the gold, everybody. They really did. So HarperCollins.
Did you have a lot? We both got very strong covers, but very different. I'm going to do my plug. My cover by Thomas Strong. It's we've both got very strong but very different covers. I had some input in the sense of I sent a lot of the artwork and things that inspired me when I was writing videos, music, books, obviously comparative titles. Did you have any kind of say on Levi's work, or was it just this wonderful reveal?
It was, just to say, like, your cover is lovely, and I really love, I know that Florentina from Waterstone, she kind of referenced the cover once, didn't she, in like a story? She actually got involved in it and was really passionate about making sure it had an amazing cover. Yeah, and it really is so
Florentina.
Yeah, yeah, and it's lovely. And so, no, to be honest with you, I had some say in the American cover, which I haven't got to hand, but it's behind me somewhere. Um, they asked me for my input in that, and I think during that process, when I talked about necessarily what I wanted and didn't want, so I wanted quite a plain cover that captured the emotion. And I think that HarperCollins, right from the beginning, they had a vision for the book. Even from the pitch meeting, they had a vision of the girl and the bear silhouetted against the sun, and that's pretty much what the cover is. You know, to be honest with you, you've got the midnight sun in the background there, and you've got April and bear. And so when they told me they had Levi attached, that was obviously a dream come true. And then they were working on the cover, sort of not collaboratively, or she says that word. So they presented it to me, and they were like, oh gosh, we're on tenterhooks, wondering if you're going to like it. And when you look at your cover for the first time, people watching this would relate. It's kind of like, oh my god, am I going to like it? Am I going to like it? What if I don't like it? And then I pressed the sort of the open button, and I looked at the cover, and I was like, oh my god, it's just amazing. You know, I love it. So that was, I saw the cover for the first time, and that was the cover, and it was gorgeous.
It's terrifying, that first moment when you open it. You trust that people will get it, but you have this pit in your stomach. Every author knows how important that cover is.
The cover, it's so, it covers
children's audience.
And it's, if you think about the cover, like even on Amazon, which we're all shopping sort of digitally at the moment, and Amazon gets a lot of traffic, or even Waterstones online, but I know people do go to Amazon, for better or for worse. It's got to work as a thumbnail as well, hasn't it? It's got to be striking as a thumbnail too. So covers are so important. They tell the story.
There was one point where we were discussing having a lot of gold foil on my cover, and almost completely gold. I mean, I think Namina Fauna's amazing, the gilded ones, her proofs were in gold.
Yeah.
But there was that sort of feeling that presenting that in a digital format would lose its impact. While it would have a great impact on shelves and in windows, it would lose its impact online, and how very important that is. And I do love the way that my cover and yours, they stand out in those fantastic
taking a moment to appreciate your cover, because you've got the gold there, and I love his the blindfold that he's got on as well. That's such a lovely kind of touch, isn't it?
And I love the little tinges of blue around him, but just around him as well.
Like a kind of like a ready brick aura.
Yeah.
Ah, Beethoven. But wait, who else is here? Helen Keller, Stephen Hawking, Harriet Tubman, Greta Thunberg, Warwick Davis, Simone Biles. Gosh, it must be Louise Gooding's debut book, Just Like Me. 40 physically and neurologically diverse people who broke or challenged stereotypes. Get your copy today online from all good bookstores.
We can gush about each other's books, so thank you for sharing me about your book. What about your research? Was there anything you edited out? Because something so detailed about the way, and I know you traveled to Norway, and you did like I traveled to various places and saw various big towers. You went up into the north. Was there anything really specific that you had to leave out that you wish was there?
No, actually, because I think when I wrote the book, I actually wrote it without the research in. So I did the research on the second draft. So I wrote the book just talking about writing process. I wrote the book and I had a rough outline of the beginning and the end. I don't plan overly, because for me personally, it doesn't work for me to plan too much. I kind of use a lot of instinct. So I had the idea of the girl going to the island, and then at the end where she leaves the island. So the research I did on the second draft, so we did go to Norway, me and my husband, and we went to Oslo, then we flew up to Tromsø, which is just the most incredible place. If you've never been to
Tromsø, Oslo and the south around Risør and around the fjords I've done, but never the north. Wow.
It's amazing, because it really was like in the olden days, it was the gateway to the polar expeditions, the whaling expeditions. So it's got this real sort of mix of cultures and nationalities there. I found it like I love travel anyway, but I found it like a really fascinating place. So I went there because the book is set during summer, and in summer you have this phenomenon called the midnight sun, which is the opposite of the the northern, you know, the polar nights. It's where the sun never sets. And so I really wanted to go there to experience that, because I knew it would have like a really visceral effect on me. So I wanted to experience it firsthand, so I could say, well, this is the effect that the midnight sun has on my psyche and my body. And it was like being plugged into a battery. It was like, it was amazing, the midnight sun. So I really wanted to get that in. And then the other area of research I did after writing the first draft was about the melting ice caps, obviously in the polar region. It was quite tricky to get right. How much should I put in? Have I got the balance right? And just trying to get the stats right, because obviously we have a lot of climate deniers as well. So you really have to use the sources and back up your narrative with the sources and statistics.
But you also have to make it believable, and did very well, in my opinion, that this is information that is coming out of an 11-year-old girl's mouth. Yeah. And I felt like I've got nieces who are around, 10, and their passion for subjects meant that I absolutely believe that April had read every single thing she possibly could and devoured it and remembered it and wanted to pull out that information at exactly the moment to make her dad feel guilty for not doing anything about climate change. You feel as an adult reading it, like there's this brilliant moment where she's like, why aren't you doing anything? And you're like, yeah, why am I not doing anything? I want to save the bear. I have to save the bear. So from that point, you're absolutely with April when she throws herself into, spoiler alert, massive jeopardy. Although as a mother, I was like, oh.
I think her dad being the scientist, that obviously kind of gave me the statistical element, because he's there to measure the temperatures, which is that there is a Bear Island where the book is set really does exist, and it is an island halfway between the mainland of Norway and Svalbard. So it does exist. And when I was looking at where to set the book, that's where I came across Bear Island. And then when I read more about the detail of it, how it was named after the polar bears, which once used to go there every winter, but could no longer reach there because of the melting ice caps, it was like, well, there's only one story to tell now. So her dad is measuring the temperatures, but he's literally just measuring them. So there's that scene where you talk about where she says, well, what are you actually doing? He's like, doing.
Really, really powerful, because he's doing more than any of us are doing, and yet all he's doing is measuring the size of the fire as it burns down the forest, or the size of the water as it melts. And
rather than throwing the pail of water on it to actually put it out in the first place. And I think sometimes that's the whole sort of metaphor for the child and adult relationship about climate change. The children are the ones that are saying, well, we need to be doing something, we need to put out the fire, we need to take action. And the adults are kind of, well, let's just have another conference and talk about what we're going to do next year.
Yeah, and I was one of those kids, back in the 90s, who wanted to save the world and was putting my cans to Blue Peter and doing all I could. And now I'm an adult who's doing all I can. But you always ask the question: is it enough? So we both touched on these really difficult subjects in our books. I'm dealing with, gender politics and flipping it on its head. You're not doing any flipping, but you're also dealing with tough subjects. And you're also dealing with grief, as is the lead character in my book. He's grieving for his friend. I think one of the things we both did, which is really interesting given that you're writing middle grade and I'm writing YA, is we both tried to infuse hope into those stories. And both through our protagonists, who despite all of this stuff that is thrown at them, keep coming at it with this almost futile hope, and yet this that turns into a fuel to do something. Was it always really important to put that kind of hope into your story? And how hard did you find it? And did you put more in through the edit? Did you put less in? Like, how did you find that balance for middle grade?
Yeah, I just want to take, before I answer your question, I just want to take this moment to say, when I read your book, I was kind of like, oh my God, when you read other people's books and you kind of get that author envy, you're like, oh, when I read your book, I was like, it feels like it's such an intelligent, sort of almost academic read. And it's the kind of book that I could see sort of winning awards, because it's tackling these really important subjects, but in a really kind of accessible way. So
we've talked about that.
No, but I just wanted to take a moment, because you're the one that set up this whole book chain, and if we don't give you the spotlight and you the glory, then it's not congruent from where I'm sitting. It's about all of us, but it's also about you too. So everybody, you have to check out this amazing book. But yeah, going back to the issue of hope, it was something, I think I'm a very positive person. I'm a glass half full person. And so for me, when I wrote the book, I think it was just more instinct that actually naturally we would have this really optimistic, hopeful, inspiring ending. And at the point of writing, there was a lot of kind of dystopian middle grade climate fiction. Some of it, like all of it, very, very good. Some spectacular books out there. Just to sort of name Nicola Penfold's Where the World Turns Wild is one of my favourites, and obviously Piers Tordy as well. But I think it was almost like an unconscious decision to write a book which was based in the here and now, which actually wasn't dystopian. The world hadn't gone to pot, but we could still instill this message of hope and belief that actually individually and collectively we can still make a difference. And as a person, I think I've done like a lot of personal development. I've done loads of courses. I've worked on my head a lot to always kind of look at the best possible outcomes, even in the face of, you know, perceived failure. And so for me, it was kind of like, I cannot possibly conceive of writing a book or delivering any kind of talk about the book without installing the message of belief, and that we can actually be the heroes and the heroines of our own life and create the future and the future of the planet that we really want. So yeah, those are things that are really important to me as an author and a person.
Yeah, and I think Jude in my book has the same. He's like, well, if nobody else is going to make a change, if no one's going to fight, I will fight. And both our characters are willing to give their lives, but for a small change, and or any change. And I think that we can do that in literature. We can put those characters in that jeopardy and push them to that brink and show that people can make change, because in reality they do. We just don't hear about them all the time.
Yeah, and they're kind of
they aren't the people who make the news.
Yeah, and they're the ordinary people. That's what I really like. It's kind of like, you know, Jude and yours and April and mine. They're not spectacular people. They're not born into greatness. They're just ordinary people or children trying to create a better future. But in both of our books, they're not just trying to create a better future for themselves. It's not like a selfish gain, which is okay if you want to create a better future for yourself anyway, because I think we all should create a better future for ourselves. But what they're trying to create is a better future for the society around them. And in The Last Bear, it's not just for the people, it's respecting the fact that we share this planet with some animals, these magnificent creatures, and actually we need to be creating a better future for them too. Otherwise, what we're going to have a world which is just full of humans. I mean, I don't understand what kind of world that would be. I wouldn't want to live in a world like that, you know.
It would be distinctly less honey.
Yeah. And just that relationship that we have with animals, and that the things that animals can give us. Like, I've never seen a polar bear in the wild. That's one of the questions I get asked a lot on World Book Day, you know. But I did have the privilege of going whale watching last year, and we got up really close to these grey whales. And when you have that sort of experience with them face to face, and it was literally so close, I touched it and it was looking at me in the eye. And it was like a really profound moment. And I thought it was very humbling and awe-inspiring. And it's kind of like, here are these magnificent animals that we are literally sort of ignoring, disrespecting, thinking that we're better than them. You know, we're not. You know, we're not.
No.
So
it's so difficult. It's such a privilege to be able to be in that space. You know, there are a lot of people who don't have the privilege to travel, to go to safari parks, to go to even, you know, zoos. Whatever you think about them, they are brilliant ways to explore animals and explore that humbling nature of them. So it's being able to bring that into a story and then into a child's life, whether they've, you know, seen a David Attenborough television program or not, in that visceral way is really incredible.
Yeah, and it's really hard. It's really hard to do that in writing, actually, to get that bond and that relationship, especially in The Last Bear. The polar bear never talks, and so people go, "Oh, does the polar bear talk?" Because I will know he's in. So to have, and for a lot of the book, it's literally just the prism of April and the bear. So to have that communication where actually that there is no dialogue from the bear, it's almost like a one-way dialogue. That was probably the biggest lot of edits I had to do in the book. Going back to the writing process, it was just developing that relationship and their dialogue, which actually isn't dialogue.
Yeah, it feels like it. Honestly, it feels like it. You do feel like she's having a conversation, and there is so much. It's almost like a silent movie. He's a brilliantly emotive silent character, which is what an achievement in a writing thing. Anyway, just from a craft perspective, that's excellent. Did you at any point think about, I mean, this must be there because maybe I'm reading into it, but the polar bear is a bit of a mother substitute in some ways? Was anything about, because there's a lot of her dealing with her grief as well?
Yeah, so weirdly enough, you know, when you kind of like, this is an author thing, but when you're when you kind of get your deal and it comes up to launch, your publicist or your marketing team, they send you a questionnaire and they ask you about the themes in your book. So I just put climate change, endangered species, and not once did I actually put grief. I didn't see that theme in the book, and it wasn't until I mean, how blind am I? And so it wasn't.
Yeah, you don't. Sometimes you just don't see the themes.
Don't see it. You know, you overthink it and just see the obvious. And so when I started, you know, writing, and when I started getting the early reviews in and people started talking about the grief element, I was like, oh yeah, my book's got that as well. So to answer your question, yes, I think if there wasn't the absence of relationship that there is between April and her dad, and if she had a mum, no way would there be a relationship with the polar bear, because it was in that space where she's missing something so profoundly and so deeply that actually she is then got the liberty to go out and create and form that relationship with this wild animal, who then becomes her best friend and is absolutely the substitute for all the affection and the attention that she craves from. And
there's a vulnerability there there's a vulnerability and honesty that she can put into that silence. So that, so you know, that silence that he has, in terms of he hasn't got dialogue, is filled full of stuff. It's filled full of words, and it's filled full of those unsaid things that she can't say to her dad about missing her mum, and that she can't say to her dad about why don't you do more, and you know, that why aren't you more present for me, and look, I'm a child having a conversation with a polar bear, not my father.
I mean, I think if I was a child, I'd much rather have a conversation with a polar bear anyway. It's kind of like, what child doesn't want to be kind of having a conversation with a polar bear? But yeah, you know, she says the things to him that she can't say to the children at school because she feels very different from the children at school. And that was something I felt when I was growing up. I'm not, you know, I wasn't a complete outcast, but I did feel like I was quite sensitive and I felt things a lot differently to other children. And that sensitivity was something I really wanted to put in the book, to sort of show that we can have female heroes in a book that aren't necessarily kind of really gung-ho and swinging an axe about and chopping, you know, but actually can be really strong just by the power of their emotions and the power of their compassion and the power of how much they can care and that willingness to care and make a difference.
Yeah, and I think actually that's something else we both have similar in our characters, that vulnerability is their strength.
Yeah.
You know, that their ability to open up and to connect with others that perhaps they shouldn't, you know. Jude with the women in society that, you know, he's been told, you know, they are special, don't go near them. And April with polar bears, both equally fearsome, I would say, are capable of accessing a vulnerability and being willing to share that and say, this is who I am, take me or leave me, and now let's go on having an amazing adventure, and I will.
Yeah, and I think it's about like the emotions for me, like, you know, I look at my book and I feel like it's a really emotional led book because it really did come from the heart. And I think that was one of the things, you know, the publisher always picked up on. It was a kind of really heart-centered book, but there is like a real vulnerability to do that. And I think lots of writers watching this could relate. It's like, how much of myself am I willing to put on the page? How much of myself am I willing to expose almost? You know, you're peeling back this kind of shield that you wear in everyday life, where we tend to present our best, you know, our best foot forward, but on the page it was kind of like, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to be completely raw, completely kind of bare, and just, you know, both senses of the word, and then just reveal really who I really am. And if people relate to that, which I think that they do, when you're really authentic and you're just yourself and you're not trying to be anybody else, which I think is a massive thing in becoming an author, it's like actually you end up finding your audience, because when you, this is like a resonance, an energy kind of thing, but when you're just yourself, you kind of emit like a frequency, don't you, like a radio signal. And so when you're yourself in your book, you will attract the same people who are just on that same radio signal. And that's the way I've always thought about lately, as I've got older and wiser, the power of just being authentic on yourself, because you meet your tribe that way.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. I think that I mean, I've been writing since I was 15. I don't know about you, how long you've been writing for, but I wrote book after book before I got to The Boy I Am. And
Yeah.
there was something about it that I said, right, you know what, the hardest thing that I've had to overcome is just, what kind of feminist am I? Do I give a crap about this? Excuse my language. But do I, am I bold enough to stand up in front of people and say, this is what I believe in, and what do I believe? And then opening that vein and opening all those kind of years of hurt and going, actually, I've kind of brushed this aside, or I've pushed that down, or I've denied that. And there have been things that I've had to overcome, even in a privileged position, and probably, less so than many others. And so I felt like it would only work well if I opened some of those veins and talked about some really difficult subjects, talked about stuff that, leads to me having a trigger warning on my book. And it needs it, because when you're talking about gender politics, you can talk about an awful lot of very dark subjects. And in the same with, the environment, you open up a vein and it's could be quite tragic. It goes back to that talking about hope. And I think that when you come from it from authenticity and truth, the human nature is to put hope on top of that, because you as a writer have to put that on as a salve, otherwise you're not going to get to the end of the book.
No, and some of some of the research for the book, I don't know about you, was actually really upsetting, and it still upsets me. And it's kind of like, I just, I say to people, I don't want to just be an author. I don't want people to read the book and then kind of go on to the next book. I want people to read the book and it to be the beginning of the story rather than the end. It's probably the same with you. It's kind of like, I've enjoyed this book. What next? It's like, no, I've enjoyed this book. How can I now make change in my life? How can I take just one aspect from this book that I've read in order to create a better society or a better planet? That's what art, maybe it's like a really grandiose kind of hope and a naive hope, but that's what I really want from the book. I want it to encourage change rather than just be a great read.
Let's take a breath. That's a beautiful moment. We've had one question from our audience, so I'm going to ask it, which is, was April inspired by any particular character in other literature?
She probably has, like every author, when you write your first big book, she has a lot of yourself in it. And I think that's probably true for most authors. You put a lot of your own experience in. She's a lot braver than me. Like, I would never go up to a polar bear and attempt to feed them peanut butter. And I don't recommend anybody does either. They are wild animals. But I think, like I touched upon before, her sensitivity and her love of animals, that definitely did come from me. But I also looked around when I was writing the book and I was looking at the news. It just seemed to be there were so many children that were out there, following people like Greta's, footsteps, going on these marches, doing the Friday strikes. And I couldn't believe that there wasn't a market for those children. And there is a market, because there's hundreds of thousands and millions of children around the world who are desperate to create a better world, who really care. And those are the children that are gonna love the book. So in a way, she's every climate activist, she's every youth climate activist, she's every kind of budding Greta Thunberg that wants to sort of do something big but doesn't know how to do it.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think the same here. I think I was very inspired by, the young men and young women today who are fighting for gender equality. The boys who wear skirts to school because their female counterparts can't wear trousers. I was like, yes, guys. I wanted to write a book for them, for the the young male feminists who want to fight for their friends and want to create a better world for the future. And I didn't see anything catering to them. So similarly, I was inspired a lot by the young people from today. So let's talk about your writing process a little. We are over half an hour, but we can keep going.
Yes.
Show me your space. Show me, what's your favorite thing in your writing space?
Well, I've got my phone precariously propped up, so I can't move around too much, because I think it will all just, like a pack of cards, it will all come tumbling down.
The favorite thing within reach that doesn't topple anything over.
Oh, okay. Well, ready, everybody? You're going to have like a cuteness alert.
It's the best. I need to get my
Hello,
bag.
Everybody.
My bag.
So this polar bear, he does keep me company a lot, but I tend to write in different places around the house. I don't have a set space. I'm not particularly formal as a person, so I might write downstairs on the sofa. I might go to the cafe. I quite often just sit propped up in bed and as long as it's kind of just, I guess, informal, rather than, I can't sit at a desk and write. That's the only thing I can't do. So when I'm sitting here, you've got like, you know, what we call the marketing background, which when you're an author, you're doing all these lives, you have to have like a good looking background, the framing as they call it. So I've got the frame, but I don't sit at it. I do my emails and stuff and from this particular space, but I write it in a much more informal place, and because I find that just helps me and my creativity a lot more.
Yeah, I'm the same. I built this study in order to work in, and I find actually often I need to step away from my desk in order to be creative. It's great for editing. I find sitting at a desk, editing I can do at a desk. But when I'm actually in that creative zone, I need to nest. I need to be in a cozy space. I need pillows, blankets. I like to wear a hat, like just like shut the world out and just get lost in words and imagining. I used to, you know, write a lot of notebooks on the go. I do that less, but yeah, I think I'm like you in that same way, that I need to sort of step out of the norm in order to create an entire new world and a new voice. And I often stick my headphones on and just, you know, try and block out the world as much as I can.
Yeah, I kind of often have music on, but not dialogue music. It can't have lyrics in the music. It has to be kind of like, when I was writing my second book, I was listening to like whale music in the background. And when one day my husband came in, he was like, "What is that shrieking going on? What's that noise?" I was like, "Oh, it's whale music." And he was like, "Oh my God," I just said it was cats kind of having a fight. So what I perceive of,
you need to create a whale music a whale song playlist to go with your book. That's the next, which is about whales for those who haven't picked it up. And I want a playlist for polar bear as well for the last pair. I want to know what you were saying with roars.
Yeah, well, obviously there was two songs that influenced me, which I didn't listen to during the writing. I could only listen to sort of in between. And the first one was "You're My Best Friend" by Queen, which is because it just, if you listen to the lyrics, it, you know, it's got this real sweet tenderness to it, and it talks about like, "You're my best friend and you'll always be there for me." And I thought, oh, that was just so perfect. And the second song is really obvious. It's Katy Perry's "Raw." Because if you read the book, there's this huge raw, you know, bear. He teaches April many things, like he teaches her how to smell like a polar bear and smell their stuff from up to 15 miles away. He teaches her how to listen properly, but he also teaches her the power of her own voice, which we use through the roaring. So he teaches her to roar, and so in that way she becomes part bear. And so by the end of the book, she's really found her voice and the power of her voice, which is the roar.
That was the bit that got me in tears at the end when she used her roar. Oh, I'm thinking I'm throwing up.
Yeah.
No, it's I'm glad you've got some songs. I definitely have a couple of songs. We'll see if we can get some in the podcast. Little clips of them. So, what did your writing process change once you had the publishing deal, the amazing publishing deal that you've got, and you're dealing with a second book with a tight timeline? What changed? What was because is it finished now? Is it an editing process? What's the stage?
It's the biggest struggle for me really was because it has been like a real quick turnaround. I know publishing, when I did a World Book Day event and they said, how long did it take from, you know, writing the book to getting published? And I said, oh, it's really quick, 2 years. And the children were kind of going, 2 years, that's so long. But if you're on the inside of publishing, you'll know that actually it's really quick. So from first page to publication was exactly 2 years. So when I got the deal, January 2020, just before lockdown, it was a 2-book deal with HarperCollins, who were fantastic, by the way. I cannot speak highly of them enough, how they presented my book, how they've made it look so beautiful, how, you know, working with them, it's just been amazing. You know, sometimes you talk about big publishers, you have a fear that you might get lost in the system, but it's not been the case for me. I cannot speak highly of them enough. But the biggest juggling thing for me was dealing with all the emotional, because I'm quite emotional, all the emotional sort of peaks of having the announcement, getting the Michael Morpurgo quote, you know, getting the cover reveal. It was, and they kind of like all these highs, but at the same time having to sort of sit down a second draft. I write a draft of the second book, so you're juggling these demands and the emotions of book one, whilst at the same time trying to cognitively switch to the creative process of book two. And I haven't got the balance yet, and I don't think I need to get the balance yet, because, you know, we're just starting out. We're at, you know, me and you and all of us probably we're at the very start of our careers, and hopefully a very long career, and so we don't have to sort of get it perfect. I think we have to cut ourselves some slack and realize these things which we could do better, and we can do better as it comes. So for me, juggling my work-life balance, I spend a lot of time on my phone now. My husband's like, no, it's on your phone, because I'm doing some Twitter, don't you? you know, so it's just juggling time and all the different demands of various books. So that's been the biggest learning.
Do you set a particular time aside? Do you have more of a plan or a synopsis for this book, or is it still quite free flowing?
No, I delivered a synopsis, quite a long synopsis, but we had to change a little bit of it just because of various kind of like just various reasons, and so that changed the synopsis, and I had to come up with kind of like a slightly new plan, which was absolutely fine. It would make a better book, and that's just like the editing process anyway. So I finished a really rough, I called it a first draft. Then my agent read it and called it a draft 0. So I was like, oh my God, it's not even a first draft. It's below a first draft. So it is, it's really raw and rough. And what we're going to do once they've given me some time off, because the promo around The Last Bear has been really intense. I've had to do loads of videos. Just loads of stuff, as you can imagine, with the big launch.
So amazing.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of promo stuff, and so then I'm going to go back to it, and I've got like 11 separate events this week as well, so it's really full on. I know. And so I've got the next week off, and then I'm revisiting book 2 like middle of March and having a chat with my lovely editors, and then picking it up from there, and probably getting a massive kind of like, you know, the workman's tools out to actually pull it into some kind of shape, and yeah, take it from there. But I know that it will get there. It's just a process, you know. However rough maybe it is, at least you've got something. That's the whole thing. I've got a manuscript to work with, and it might take a lot of work, but some books do take a lot of work and some books don't, and that's just the process.
Yeah, I think I went through 18 major edits over the course of 6 years, which was, you know, from initial idea to publication, I think. And that was a major edit for me, was when I changed a plot point or changed a character, or, you know, made a major change to the plot, obviously. And then in between there were just dozens and dozens and dozens of little edits and things like that. Do you use any particular software or tools that help you?
No, like I know loads of people like Swear by Scrivener. I don't know whether you use Scrivener, but I tried Scrivener once, and I was like, oh my God, it's just way too complicated. I can't work it out. So I'm much more simplistic. I'm that kind of person. Like, I don't know about you, but I can work really efficiently on one thing at a time. I struggle when I'm working on multiple things at the same time. So for me, I just use Word document, you know. That's what I write in. I do some, like, I use a journal beforehand, and I spend maybe, before starting a first draft, I might spend like a month or even a couple of months doing diagrams, you know, character sort of profiles and location elements. I do draw, but I mean, obviously I'm terrible, and if I had even attempted this cover, we would all be laughing right now at how awful it is. So I'm just stick diagrams. I find it quite useful maybe to draw the arc, like the character arc. So I'll have like April at the start, and this is where she is small and no voice, and which kind of maybe plot the points in the book. And they don't necessarily happen when I write, you know. Quite often I plan, not a lot, but those plot points may or may not appear. But I like visual stuff, I think, which is why I do like drawing some things in as well.
I'm a doodler. I draw a lot of I started off doing comic books when I was 15, so I often
really
draw. Again, I'm terrible. I mean,
have you thought about doing graphic novels or anything like that?
Oh, it would be a dream. It would be a 100% dream. But I did a graphic novel for my entire class when I was 15, where I drew all of them in a graphic novel and systematically bumped them off, because it's the only way I could get 25 people in a graphic novel was to make a murder mystery. So they got killed off, and it was terrible. I completely like ripped off other comic books that I kind of traced and copied and learned from. But it was an experience for me of telling a story. And then I found, actually, you know what? My parents are artists. I have a little bit of the art gene, but not enough. But I still want to tell stories, and so that was how it turned into words. As much as I was a book fan, I didn't think I could ever write a book. And then I thought, well, I want to tell a story. My art isn't good enough. Let's try writing a book. And that was 15. And now it's, you know, I'm nearly 40, and book 1 has come out. But I said to myself at 15, that's what I want to do. I'm going to put some time aside for it, and I don't care how long it takes. And so you just got, it is a tenacity thing, and you find your process and you adapt your process for each book, to be bluntly honest, not for, you know, and each editor that you work with, and each, you know, each course you go on and each craft point you learn. I think we are well over our half hour, so I'm going to ask one more question. We have the amazing Clare Helen Welsh next week that you will be interviewing. So I figure what we could do is think about one good question. She's written a picture book, or several picture books, award-winning picture books and others. What would we ask her if we were going to think of a question?
I would think maybe something which is probably a really obvious question, but just the difference between writing a picture book to a middle grade and the dynamics and the logistics of writing a picture book and really paring down your words to match the illustration. So something just more about the process. And I think people think it's easy, but it's not easy. And I'd really love to get her take on it. How long does it take? Does she plan it in words or does she plan it in pictures? And how do the two match together? I think it's really fascinating. I'm really looking forward to interviewing her. I think it'd be really fascinating just to get.
And she, like you, deals with big emotional subjects as well in her books, and does it in the efficiency and, you know, preciseness of a picture book writer, with, again, and dealing with an illustrator. I mean, you've both had, you know, amazing work with amazing illustrators, so that would be one thing I would like to know about. This has been the first of our BookChain interviews with the fantastic Hannah Gold. I would like everyone to applaud.
I'm going to applaud myself. It's a real pleasure to pick it off, and I think it's a great initiative, and I really look forward to seeing who joins and who turns up and who we see in the future, and just the journey of the BookChain, who we are at the beginning and where we're going to be at the end. It's kind of like a book in itself, isn't it? It's like the journey that we're going on to see what actually happens. There's some fantastic authors taking part as well, many of whom
there are. So if you've joined, and if you've watched all the way through, or if you've come, or if you've gone, if you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're listening to it on the podcast that we're going to create, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Tune in to the next episode where Hannah will be interviewing Clare Helen Welsh. Thank you.
Yes.
Good night. Mwah.
Bye.
Oh, hang on, I got my bear. I need to do my bear going by. Hang on. Bye.
Bye.
I'm Sheila M. Averbuck. I'm the author of Friend Me, a middle grade thriller about a bullied girl whose bully has a bad accident, and she starts to worry that her new best friend, who she only knows online, might have caused it. It's got lots of twists and lots of tech, including a robotic cat, like my friend Fred here. You can pick up Friend Me at Waterstones or your favorite independent bookstore, or learn more at SheilaMAverbuck.com.
So this is our little post-show drinks. I now have a slightly melted gin and tonic to replace my cup of tea.
I've still got the bear mug, everybody. Still there.
I didn't confirm what was in it. Was it a hot chocolate?
Oh no, something really tame. It's don't laugh, everybody. Elderflower water and cordial.
Oh, how beautiful!
How sophisticated.
Do you know what? That doesn't surprise me that you're a person who drinks elderflower water.
You know,
I don't drink elderflower.
I really like it. And actually, when we were having my launch with Tring Bookshop the other week, I was thinking, what am I going to drink during it? I don't want to drink alcohol because I would get really kind of dry and hyper. I'd really love some elderflower cordial, but I forgot to get any. And my husband came home, who bought me the mug, and he goes, I've got you a drink for tonight. It's elderflower cordial. I was like, oh yeah. You know.
This is the YA life. I drank champagne during my book launch and I got properly sozzled by the end. I slept really well that night.
Yeah, your book launch was really good fun. I remember I caught the last time. I had to miss the first half, but I really enjoyed watching it, and it was really interesting hearing the process.
I had a bottle of champagne, and I definitely enjoyed a good 3 or 4 glasses of that during the process. It was all to hydrate. It was just hydrate.
And that kind of like, imagine having like an intravenous drip set up for other people's launches, just kind of going in as you're kind of gradually doing your launch, and by the end of it, you're out of it. But we've been through the launch now, haven't you, me and you? What's really interesting, because there's people in our group that are still going, they've got the launch ahead. And I think before my launch and publication, it was like, it's almost like you're entering the unknown. You don't know what to expect. And so it's almost like this mythical other side. And now you've been through it, you kind of feel like, oh, I'm really the sagely wise one that's been through it. So it's a kind of a weird position, being the ones that are published first in the year, as opposed to those that have got months and months for their launch to come.
And you were part of other debut groups before this, weren't you? I read in your acknowledgement you were part of a debut 20 group, as was I, and debut 19 because my book was 2 years delayed. But yeah, you kind of, I felt like the young thing then, watching everybody else. Now I feel like the old thing, but that's the chain, isn't it? It is a book chain.
Yeah,
like
that's it. Yeah, and from people, when I was in the debut 20 group, which is a Facebook group, I really learned from them and their launches, but specifically kind of what happened after a launch. We can hype the launch so much, but in effect, not a lot happens, let's be honest. It's just the book comes out and people are going to go, well done. All the stuff is before, but then but you kind of think, oh my God, on the day, what's going to happen with my sales? But really, all the big stuff seems to happen like weeks or months afterwards, if you get lucky to get award nominations or book clubs or things like that. It's like, it is like an accumulative effect of a snowball, you know, going down the hill and
but
building up steam.
The launch is a really nice, it's such an important moment because it is a moment to reflect on all of those years of working to get published. And you know, all that mountain that you have climbed, and it is for anybody, no matter what stage they are in the career, whether they write a book and get published within a year or whether it takes them 20, 30 years, it's still a mountain. You know, and then you see the other mountain on the other side and you go, okay, but you need to take that moment of base camp to go, okay, we've got here, now we've got to go to the next peak. So the whole point of this bit is to ask quick fun questions. We'll put maybe one of the answers into our special podcast and our video for our first episode, and then we'll pepper some others throughout the series, and we're going to ask one special question for Christmas, which I'm going to tease now, and then everybody can come back at Christmas and find out what it is. As a writer, who would you choose, or what would you choose as your mascot, avatar, or spirit animal? It can't be a bear. It can't be a bear.
Well, okay, I'm leaving this chat now. If it can't be a bear, then I think it would be a tiger. Because I'm Chinese astrological sign, I'm a tiger, so it'd be a tiger. I've always think tigers are lucky, so definitely tiger.
Next question. What is your top writing tip?
I think that success is an inside job. And so even though there's lots of different measures of success, really the only measure that we can really put on it is what we think is successful. So don't, you know, if you don't get the film deal, if you don't get the 6-figure deal, that doesn't make you a disappointment. It's how you reframe whatever positive thing happens. Even if you sell 3 copies as opposed to 300 copies, you've still sold 3 copies. So it's looking at every result and looking at it in a really favorable way rather than a I could have done better way. But really a polar bear. She's